welcome to a ETTO spoiler cast, which are distinguished things now because we've got the catch up again. You can't just say catch up in this podcast; it wouldn't make any sense. So it's a good thing I didn't. Otherwise, that would be really weird and confusing.
We got spoiler cast, comic cast, catch up. Really drop the ball on the cast. Sweet. It's fine. It's fine. I'm Will.
Yes,
I'm Ben. I believe this is the first ETTO podcast that's just been the two of us. First piece of ETTO content that's just been the two of us.
It's just us. Everyone else is too lazy to watch this damn show.
Yeah.
Being The Bad Batch Season 1. Not a single piece of content dropped from us about this show. We've waited until it's all come out. We waited so long that at the time of the recording, 2 weeks. At the time of this going out, 1 week, there's a whole nother show starting. So we thought it'd be time to talk about The Bad Batch in full with spoilers. But before the spoilers, maybe a little spoiler-free for people that haven't watched it yet and are contemplating it by watching a spoiler video. How'd you feel about Season 1, spoiler-free?
I loved it. It was way better than I was ever expecting it to be. I think the general sentiment when we all saw that this was going to be a show was that, like, okay, why? Why The Bad Batch specifically? But I think what it ended up being, which it's not really a spoiler, just an overall examination of post-Order 66 Star Wars, was very, very exciting, and doing it through the lens of all these characters was very fun in the end. And you grew to love them. Even Wrecker, who at the start I hated.
Yeah. Wrecker was had all the possibility of, and like you said, you get to it, but he was like, he could have been Zeb, but he was just a little bit too annoying. But then, he just kind of settles into the group. The same thing. The Bad Batch did nothing for me in the Season 7 Clone Wars thing. It was a weird set of episodes. And I think because we knew this show was coming, it really felt like, I'm supposed to love these guys, but I don't really care. And now you got... But I'm glad this show, similar to Mando, similar to Rebels, we really should understand that the shows are never just about the characters. It's so much about the world of Star Wars when it comes to Filoni. And this was just
absolutely
solid. Like some of the episodes we'll talk about, it's like they devote so much time to an element of Star Wars that I never thought we would touch, which is so 100%. Cool.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that it is kind of the sequel series to Clone Wars more so than Rebels was, because this does carry over, I think, more of the tone of that show, which was a little bit more adult. I love Rebels, like I love it, but it's definitely the show that Disney wanted to make, less so Dave Filoni, I think.
It's both a sequel to Clone Wars, definitely more so that, but also a prequel to Rebels in ways I wasn't expecting, which is it's just very, very cool. Sure. It makes me happy that I've realized at this point Dave Filoni has put enough stuff out that he can pull from different like piles of content, Star Wars content that he's made for like lots of different story arcs, and you're like, oh, it's not just all from this one thing anymore. Which that was what Rebels was just callbacks to Clone Wars, which is fine. But I love that you're like pulling in bits from The Mandalorian, you're pulling in bits from Clone Wars, Rebels. It's so he's doing a good job, and I'm glad that Disney have seen that and like, okay, we're putting you in charge of things in general now.
They're just letting him do, like, the man knows what Star Wars is, and he also knows like what the prequels are. Like, as much as it pulls from his work, he definitely gives the love to the prequel series through this as well, which is really cool. Super fun. No, we'll leave like the ranking system until the end of this in terms of where this series fits. But diving headfirst into spoilers, first episode, Aftermath, which was like an hour and a bit, I think.
God, it was an hour, wasn't it?
It was like a full-blown... And for me, I feel like, we'll get to it, I feel like the end of the show maybe should have been bookended with 2 hour-long things, because I think it kind of fell flat there. But this hour-long episode was the kind of one where I think I was on my phone watching it, because I was like, it's an animated show, it's fine, I'll just watch on my phone. And then like 4 minutes in, I'm like, no, I've got to turn the telly on. I've got to get the sound system, because it just opens in a massive way. And like the whole of the show, this is the best looking animation on Disney Plus. Let's say that as a bracket. It's just stunning.
It's definitely like carrying over the Clone Wars aesthetic, obviously, which is one that a lot of people loved, so I'm glad they went back to that. But the way in which, I want to say shot, it's not shot, it's like animated, but it feels shot so cinematically, and like it's it feels like you're watching a little Star Wars movie each week. That's what I felt with Bad Batch, which was so lovely, because it doesn't the way they frame some of the shots and all that stuff, and the way lighting, which I didn't think was possible with this art style.
Yeah,
the way they incorporate like a lot of shading that wasn't present in Clone Wars. Oh, it's just amazing.
It's stunning. Like there's shots as the like deeper into the show where, you know, a ship flies past and it's just a scene. It looks like it's from one of the films. There's no hint of it being an animated, and I guess the films would be CG. But totally that. It almost has that feeling of Toy Story 4 when it was like suddenly these really did look like little toys in a real environment. The characters are still that design, but the environments have just stepped it up a notch. It's stunning. This episode opens with cameos galore. It's one thing that like you can live on two sides of the fence with, because of Mandalorian season 2 was not cursed by it, but plagued by it as well. This show is like, I've got a list of all the episodes, and I think every episode has a word that's like, it's like a cameo. Totally. And this one opens straight away with Kanan with a very strange voice. I loved the moment, but it was definitely just Freddie Prinze Jr.'s normal adult man voice. Yeah.
It's his voice was weird. I respect that they brought Freddie Prinze Jr. back, but it definitely doesn't have the versatility of a D. Bradley Baker, for example.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I will admit, I completely missed this cameo to start off with, because I watched Rebels a while back, and I was like, so I didn't like catch on to the Caleb Dune thing. I was like, oh, it's just a kid. It's Order 66. It's cool. It's a little thing. Yeah. And then I jumped in the Discord, and people were like, oh my God. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. I got halfway through a Rebels rewatch at the start of this year and then never finished it, which is where all that stuff is. But once I went back and watched it with that context, I was like, this is very cool.
It's it's like a little passing of the torch between the shows. Like, it's a bit of Clone Wars, a bit of Rebels. This is the new thing. Super cool opening. How did you feel with the cameos? Because they definitely come thick and fast. I think the one cameo for me that doesn't quite... That feels the most like we just wanted to put her in here because of Mandalorian was Fennec Shan. I think she never really gave anything. The one episode you were like, what's that episode again? The one that's devoted to her just running around a city and just kind of being there. And then when she
comes back a bit later again, for a very short amount of time.
It's the one character that's like, you've got Book of Boba Fett coming and you had Mando. It was like, they just wanted to keep her in the public eye. So when she turns up.
Like, I from what they did have of her, like, it's clear they're setting up something cool. Like, they're setting up her backstory a bit, which I would like to know more about. It's just like this. I agree. This season very much it felt like we are promoting this character rather than going into that. I'm sure there are plans, and I'm sure we'll get them in a Bad Batch season 2 or even like a little bit of Book of Boba Fett. But like, it's just very, very interesting choice. I think the cameos I tended to like were like more deep cut ones. That was a good pun because I'm about to talk about cut, which was that kind of cameo where I was like, that is a random Clone Wars arc that I would never have thought they would go back and touch, but it makes total sense with someone like the Bad Batch that they would. It's just like stuff like that. Even like the Martez sisters, I know that's going to be controversial, but I didn't hate how they brought them in. I think a lot of the times, maybe in 90% of the cases, the less well-known cameos or like the more random ones were actually the better ones done.
For sure.
Where stuff like the Kanan cameo was a bit like, okay, it's cool, but maybe not as well executed as I would have liked.
For sure. Yeah, and speaking of the cut episode, that was great because the fact that they not only used him as a cameo, but it was like a teaching moment. It was I'm glad that they got the I want to leave Omega behind moment out of the way in episode 2. It's like, okay, we're beyond that. He knows. He's got to keep the kid.
We've done that with Mandalorian for so long.
Yeah. Just get it over and done with. And that whole setup was great. It was also like the light, because it's one of the moments that sticks in my brain is when they're all around Cutter's table and there's just lighting pouring in through like little crevices. It's like, that was stunning. And it also, I guess we should talk about Hunter, who is kind of the show's protagonist, which is a strange thing because obviously it's a full group, but it's kind of him and Omega through the whole thing.
Yeah.
I I was pretty sure I wouldn't like him purely because he's going that like Rambo route that it's not funny, like the full head scar, all the rest of it. But I think through D. Bradley Baker, which you shouldn't be surprised by, he managed to create yet another interesting clone that I'm excited for. And it's that beautiful thing of Star Wars, is the main character is always the least interesting. They're always the most vanilla version of whatever that needs to be, and everyone 100%. Around them is interesting.
That's what he is. Like, even Echo, who was originally a vanilla clone, is now more unique than Hunter is. But that's fine, because he is the character that they need to, like, base the show around. I guess he's the character that they use as a vessel to tell Omega's story a lot of the time, which is what ends up being the core of the season. So
totally. Omega is another element of the show which before it started, it was like, oh, this is just Grogu. Oh, we're just retreading this whole thing. And I'm not sure if we entirely got away from that by the end of the show. It still has that kind of little element of that we've done this before, but I think Omega as a character in her own right is very, very interesting. And they really nailed how to make a character overpowered but still engaging. Like, I was never annoyed that she was able to fly a ship or do those things, because they're created. Like, she was created to be able to, and like they get to in the end, she's basically got attributes of all the Bad Batch in her, which is it's cool to have a character that is a summarization of all your other characters.
Totally.
It's a wild moment.
Yeah, I think definitely initially I was like, oh no, is this going to be the Force again? We don't need the Force, or like, we don't need that kind of character in that. I think you and I were both worried it was very much like a Grogu kind of thing that they were teasing, and I was not convinced they weren't going to retread that ground. But I'm glad that in the end she's like very much a different character. She's her own character. And she actually manages to keep everything kind of, I guess, uplifting, but at the same time, she has her own conflicts that, like, it fits the tone of the show so well. They're trying to keep it a bit whimsical. They've got the Wrecker in there, and she plays off Wrecker so well, but then she plays off the insecurities of everyone else as well, which I love. I think, in my opinion, she is actually the real, like, success of this show. It's that character works so well in the end, because I just wasn't convinced after I saw the early stuff in it. Absolutely.
She's the one character that I'm like, bring her back in Mando. I want to see what she looks like after all these years. There's still an element of me that's like, are they going to eventually tie her to the Force? If this whole cloning thing is all, it's still all out there. It could still link back to the Grogu. I mean, the Kaminoan in Mando, that, you know, that's all. There's all still little ties there. We'll see.
I did like getting more of the Kaminoans. It wasn't a thing I thought I needed.
Yeah.
Like, in Clone Wars, they're in a few of the episodes, and they're like okay, but they're always just like kind of Palpatine chills, basically. But I liked in this that they had their own little story going on. It didn't need to be much bigger than it was, but I liked that they examined that part of it and were like, no, these are like their own. There's only really like two of them, isn't there? These are their own beings and stuff, and they have their own motives separate from necessarily what the Empire is doing. So. For
sure. It's another one of Filoni's great gifts of making the prequels more interesting. Like, I'm sure when I eventually rewatch them through, I'm like, oh, it's Tom Wayne, there's all these people. Yeah. It's like, they don't actually matter, but he's made them matter.
It's that guy that got shot in a room.
Yeah. Down in a second. But speaking of Filoni, obviously, there's plenty of like filler episodes in this. Because the beauty of the Star Wars content, like we said, is anything could come back. So a lot of these episodes that feel like filler are probably setting up a character or an arc that he wants to come back to in the future. Episode 3 was the only one that was really like, oh god, because it was a moon with a space dragon and they had to steal a thing.
I'm actually even trying to remember this, and I there's like bits of it that are popping into my head, but I really can't remember much of it at all. Just moments.
Because obviously the bigger crux of this episode is Crosshair. It's mainly a Crosshair episode, because this is when he gets his like death squad and they have to go. It's good soldiers follow orders and all that. But having this in episode 3 already a moment of, oh god, is this is it moments of filler? But I think this is probably the biggest one. Everything else is still an enjoyable episode. But as I said, Crosshair in this, I feel like hopefully will become more interesting as the show goes on. I think he was probably the most underused element. Like there's like a great 2-parter where he's hunting them down, all set on Braca and all that. But it felt like his presence after this episode really just kind of falls into the background, and it's a lot of the Bad Batch doing jobs. I kind of would have liked the show to have a bit more of a split between the two of them, so I could have more moments of Crosshair kind of. I mean, he starts very evil, but more moments of grey and stuff. I think he was cool, but it makes the moments of like, is he or isn't he, just a little bit less interesting because we didn't get to spend that much time with him, especially because he turns in Aftermath. He turns in the very first episode. I kind of would have liked maybe 1 or 2 more episodes in the show with him.
I mean, it feels like for a show that is called Bad Batch, like, I guess he leaves the Bad Batch, but I would have liked that you kind of are examining him more as like you're still examining the whole Bad Batch, even though he's separate. Like, he definitely felt like for like 50% of the episodes he was on the back burner, and then he popped up every now and then. Like when he's in the initial episode and he does his turn, and then at the end when he kind of is with all of them again and he has those personal dilemmas and stuff, that's amazing. I love it. So I'm totally with you. I wish he had more.
After we then get the Fennec Shand episode that's just kind of a bit of dicking around. Some cool action sequences. Nothing in the show is ever bad. There's just some moments that are a space dragon.
Yeah, totally.
But
he
eventually
jumped on some speeders and stuff in this, and then that's all I remember. Remember,
but then we like roll into kind of the biggest crux of the show, which is from there, Echo knows of a place that they can get information, and they go to Ord Mantell where Sid is there, and they just kind of do it. This is the Mandalorian season 1 part of the show where it's just do a job and I'll give you information. And she kind of never gives him information.
Yeah. This is the video game quest that, like, basically we always talk about Mandalorian following. This is that. They just, like, go do this, come back. Oh, we got paid a bit. Cool, keep going.
Yeah. And then at the end of all, they give their money away anyway. It's like, love Star Wars. But it is such in the recent years, there's been a lot of that video game questing. And I will admit, like, still, again, super engaging episodes that, you know, showcase elements of Star Wars that are cool. But it is that thing that Mando did it, and now this where it's like, can we get back to that arc? What's the arc up to?
Totally. I did like the episode 5, which is the Rancor one. I thought that was very fun. And I like the ambiguity that we don't know if it is the one or if it's a different Rancor or something, and Bib Fortuna showing up at the end, still kind of leaving that up in the air, because it makes you be like, I want to feel emotions for this character because I know what they're going to go through in the future.
Yeah, no, that was a good fun one. The next one with the Martez sisters. I'm with you. Yeah. I don't think they're so... I think that season 7 of Clone Wars is just very confusing in the episodes they chose. And I think that the only reason it is that we know what they didn't choose. And those episodes are probably... They would have been more enjoyable, but now seeing the direction we're taking with Star Wars, it's very clear that the episodes that were chosen were to help the preceding events that they wanted to show off. And the Martez sisters were one of those things. I think they were better here. Like, I think they were more interesting, more fun characters in this, less so their arc.
I like the Martez sisters. I also like them in season 7. I don't have the issue with them that everyone seems to. I think the problem with the Martez sister arc in season 7 was actually the Pikes. And I think everything the Pikes touches is horrible. There's an episode later in this season as well that the Pikes are in that I also think is one of the worst episodes, personally. But anyway, I actually think that is more of the issue here than the Martez sisters. I love the way in season 7 they examine the like little dynamic, and we get that on Coruscant, and then we go to whatever that Pike planet is, and that's when it all falls apart, in my opinion. So I really like this. I like that they were kind of teasing something with Wrecker and his chip, and I like that they ended up resolving that very quickly, because I was kind of worried that it was going to be like an ongoing season arc where like their chips were malfunctioning, but I like pretty soon I think it's literally like the next arc after this. They're like, no, we need to deal with the chips.
Yeah. I liked that it was a thing because it was obviously something that everyone would have been questioning, the Bad Batch being clones. And I think there was even the question of, do they even have chips because they were the Bad Batch? But yeah, I'm glad that gets resolved pretty quickly with, like, you know, the best character in Star Wars canon. Second to, like, Ahsoka, I guess. Yeah. In the next episode with Captain Rex turns up in a little hoodie, hiding literally nothing. Like, he's in a full clone trooper costume with a hoodie. Yeah.
Of course, we were going to get him. I'm glad. Yeah. I'm glad he wasn't... I think I'm actually glad he wasn't in more, because we get a lot of him across, like, obviously Clone Wars. We get a lot of him in Rebels as well. Yeah. Surprisingly, like, when I was rewatching it earlier in the year, I was like, man, he's in a lot more of this than I remembered. So I'm glad that they're, like, using him sparingly, because you're right, he's a great character, but I don't think, especially when you're building a show and, like, lore around the Bad Batch, I think using him too much kind of feels like you're maybe taking some of the spotlight away. So I'm glad he came in here for a very important arc, but they kind of were like, okay, you can go now. You can go now.
He just leaves as well. Like,
totally.
He leaves before what is, like, the most disastrous episode for the Bad Batch, which is quite funny. It's like, if he stuck around, he probably could have helped. But I like that he bounces quick. I like that, again, it, you know, pulls back to the season 7. They go to Bracca, which is from Jedi Fallen Order, which is sick.
I was a bit disappointed there wasn't any Mongolian rock to bring us into Bracca this time. But that's okay. I can hope. Jedi Fallen Order 2, I'm sure we'll have that.
So, we'll get some more. Oh, God, what a freaking opening to a Star Wars game that was. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Again, just I love the utilization of the Star Wars world in this. A lot of people, you know, we spoke about cameos, but, like, they go to places that we're very familiar with. And I know that that's sometimes something that people don't enjoy, and that it makes the Star Wars universe smaller. But it for me, is never that. It's always just examining things we know of deeper is what these shows do so well. And so I have no problem going back. I'd have a problem if we end up on Tatooine at some point.
Yeah, no, totally. Tatooine's the only one where I'm like, I'm fine not going back there. Like, I'm honestly, you go back to Endor, or like you go back to Hoth or something, I'd even be keen on that. But it's just Tatooine that we've been to like 10,000 billion times.
We don't.
And like, Bracca is like a out there choice, but it makes sense given the context we get it for it. Most people have no clue, just like it's junk planet. But then if you play Jedi Fallen Order, there's very interesting lore around that and stuff. So I like that they went there. Episode 7 was like a good first part, but I think episode 8 here was the real standout. Oh my God. Maybe the best episode of the season. Awesome. This is the one where this is also one of the occasions where I feel like the show is at its most cinematic. They're escaping the jet engine of the big Jedi cruiser, and then the jet engine is like slowly turning on. Terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And then obviously towards the end of the episode, Will's favorite cameo, I'm pretty sure, Cad Bane shows up, and just like the gunslinger way it's shot. Yeah, it's so good.
It's so cool. Like, and it is the thing that I think Filoni and Favreau brought to Mando, which is like utilizing the genre of westerns and samurais, because there's a little bit of samurai in this, but mostly the western. It's like it's stunning. And yeah, this whole episode, there's plenty of gunfights, and every one of them is unique. It was the most tense an episode has felt as well. I think actually maybe getting rid of Rex and knowing that it's kind of like all your friends are gone and it's all on you guys now.
Yeah, like you're on your own. Also, like, Rex, we know, is alive. Like, we know nothing happens to Rex. Yeah. And, like, obviously, it's quite likely they're not going to kill everyone off. But just because we don't know where these characters end up, there's always a chance. And, like, there actually feels like there's stakes.
Totally. Yeah.
Even, like, bringing Cad Bane in, we don't know what happens to him further on, do we?
God, there's nothing. Well, that's one of the interesting things this show did, was there was an abandoned arc for Clone Wars where he is killed by Boba Fett, but in this show he has the dent where that shot hit in the abandoned one. So it's like either it's happened or it hasn't happened yet, but in canon it looks like he's survived whatever should have killed him.
That's cool.
And I'm sure he'll, like, book a Boba Fett, please, come on, bring him into live action. I'll let you.
That'd be awesome. I think I remember when this episode came out, I saw you tweet about it on Twitter before I watched it, and you were like, that is like the coolest cameo I've ever been. And I'm like, oh my God, what could it be?
What could it be?
I was like, God, it's not Luke Skywalker, or like, but I was like, that's not a good cameo. What's Will talking about? And then it came up, and I was like, interesting. I wouldn't have picked that, but I can see why. I think it's more the framing around it that was really like the strength of it, because Cad Bane as a character is cool, but for me, I'm not like, this is the coolest cameo until you kind of examine the context in which it's done. It's
totally cool. It's because it's also that thing this series builds in a really clever way, builds up to this moment, having different parties hunting Omega down throughout the show, and it's like they're calling up different people, but you never hear the other end of the line. You're like, it's Boba Fett, who is it? And so to land Cad Bane, who I think he's only in like 3 episodes of the Clone Wars, it's one of those, and then like a Boba Fett thing, it's one of those characters that is never in your brain. He is now. Like, when I watch Book of Boba Fett, I'm going to be like, where is he? But up until now, it's like, there is no point you would expect him to turn up. And that sequence is great. The fact that he actually takes Hunter down, it wasn't like the protagonist has a bit of plot armor. It's like, no, he shot him in the head, like in the chest.
Yeah. As I said, I actually thought at this point, because they build the tension so well, and because they build the stakes, I actually thought like that could be it.
Totally.
And so like, I kind of, I'm a bit sad they didn't go down that line, to be honest, but it is animated Star Wars in the end. I don't know if they're going to go that dark, but I just, because looking back on Clone Wars, Cad Bane is one of the coolest characters in that, so it makes total sense, but it's just so unexpected for some reason. Yeah, he's just so good at pulling these little characters back in. This, alongside Cut, definitely my 2 favorite cameos, just because I wouldn't have seen them coming a mile away, but then when they do come in, I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. Of course you do that. Yeah. I'm
so excited that he has 7 seasons to pull upon. Like, I'm sure, and then Rebels as well. Like, I'm sure there's some cool stuff coming up in season 2.
Yeah.
Less cool is once he's got Omega. And also, I would say when Crossbones, basically, when Crosshair gets burnt by the engine that turns on as well, it's like there's just so much more weight to all the moments, because no one just like escapes by the skin of their teeth. People just get shot or burnt and like killed in a way that Rebels always kind of recoiled from a little bit, because it was that safer show. Like you said, this definitely hits the Clone Wars feeling of everything's a bit more important. Like, nothing in Rebels ever really, apart from the season finales, nothing in Rebels ever really feels that important, whereas...
And even in those, it's always, like, space magic that does it. It's never, like, actual, like...
a gun.
Jet engines or guns or...
Totally.
Or explosions, or, like, it all always... I mean, I guess... I can't even remember Kanan's death that well. Is it an explosion? I don't even know.
It's an explosion, and he's, like, forcing it back as they get away.
Anyway. But it's, like, it's never, like, as... gritty is kind of the word. Totally. It's like I don't know if I like using that word, because I'm like, I don't want my Star Wars to be gritty. But it's gritty in the right way.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, the next episode where it's just Fennec Shand and Cad Bane dicking around in an abandoned Camino lab was fine, but it was definitely one of those things where you bring in Cad Bane and then you just kind of have him, and like he has incredible moments. There's still great action in this episode, but it was a little bit of a like, well, I hope he comes back later, because that wasn't the greatest use of his character for another bit.
It's also because like Fennec Shand is cool, but like we don't have the history of Fennec Shand. We have the history of Cad Bane. So in our brains, Cad Bane should always win that fight.
He's the good guy.
So there's not a lot of tension there about what's going on.
Yeah.
And I almost like, I'm like, is there another character you could have pulled on here? Like this definitely, compared to the other episode, this feels like Fennec Shand was inserted just because we have Fennec Shand, we have Ming-Na Wen, let's use that.
My like crazy, only just thinking about it, is you could, because it was like an old base, you could have had it be that Boba Fett had like a secret base there, and that's just kind of like his hideout, because then you have Boba versus Cad Bane, and that's instantly more engaging, especially being about clones and stuff. Like that's got a link, whereas Fennec Shand, I don't know what she's involved. She's just a general bounty hunter at this point. She doesn't know Boba, I don't think. So yeah. But yeah, it was a bit of a weak one, and it was also like, as much as anyone could die, Omega wasn't going to die.
Yeah,
like, so totally. It was like, well, she's going to get rescued at some point in this episode.
And is there any? Because this is a Kaminoan lab. Is there any teasing of like cloning stuff in here? Because I don't remember them actually going into that
there
much.
There was some like vats with like failed clones.
Yeah,
that's where that was. And I think Lorna, or one of the known Khmer knowns, was killed. I think.
Yeah.
Fennec Shand just killed them.
It's fine. I'm gonna make you stop saying that word.
I'm gonna say cams. Chemines. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm gonna stop saying it.
And like that stuff's cool. I mean, they're trying to justify what happened in episode 9 with all of it, which is fine. If you can do to that what you did to the prequels, I'll be impressed, because to me that is makes far less sense than any of the prequels. The thing with the prequels is they all make sense. They're just horribly like
they've added detail.
Like all the actual content and adding to the lore in the prequels is good. It's just the deliveries, the performances, the CGI, everything else is not great.
The only thing I worry with the trying to fix episode 9's cloning thing, which like elements of the show definitely are, is it's really hard that they're setting up a thing that they're fixing a thing like 60 years or like 45 years. So it's like, at least in the Clone Wars, they were just playing with a couple of years. This is like, we have to deal with this clone thing for 45 years of Star Wars content.
Yep.
Like,
we know we've got it now, and then we've got it in Mandalorian, which is a long time after this.
And then in Rise, which is at least another 20-something years after Mando. So I'm like, I hope Filoni works like across all the shows. I hope that the end of Mando, which apparently that's going to kind of wrap up and turn into another show. Hopefully just the end of Mando is when we put a nail in that. And then even though these other shows are existing around that time, they just don't bother with it. Once we as the audience understand the story of clone stuff, I hope we can leave it behind and not just keep touching it in everything. But we'll see. But the next episode along the season was so cool. Like, it was a 3-parter, which is unusual in these shows, I guess, as well. But like the physical reaction when you just cut to Hera and Chopper sitting on the top of a hill watching space.
Yeah,
I was like,
totally.
What is happening?
And again, I didn't expect it. I should have expected this one more than the other ones, for sure. Like, it makes a lot of sense. Ryloth is very integral to everything Filoni has done. So, like, I admit on this occasion, this was probably my bad. But then it did make that moment when you cut to them and you're like,
this is happening.
Yes.
This is actually happening.
And also, she has an accent, which is wonderful. More Chopper. Love more Chopper, of course.
Because, obviously they set it up by mentioning the Sindulas and stuff, which we've kind of seen before. But despite that, at least for me, and possibly, it was still like, oh, we're not going to see anything else. Like, it's just going to be about them. And then the Bad Batch will come in and they'll play with some politics and they'll be like, oh, we got the bad guys. But no, we spend like 3 episodes on this deconstruction of what the Empire is doing to these smaller places that were, because I think like they never aligned. And so the Empire have come in and been like, you have to align with us or you're nothing, right? That's the kind of the thing.
I think so. I don't remember the exact where they end up in Rebels, but I know they are fighting back against. I think Hera goes there to like convince her dad to not do something. I don't remember. I really need to rewatch Rebels is what this is telling me. I need to finish that rewatch. But no, I think just everything about the Syndulas is always really interesting, and I like that they're just doing more Twi'lek stuff as well. I always feel like in early Star Wars they were just like the sexy character or Bib Fortuna, and so I like that they're kind of like going back and like actually. I mean, it's been happening for a while now because obviously Filoni's been working on it back since Clone Wars. But I like that is now one of the integral races, I feel like, to Star Wars that we know the most about. We know all the history behind, which I think is very, very cool. And I just love the physics on their weird head things.
So this 3-parter, it was really good, and I think showcased what I hope the show does a little bit more, which is use the kind of surroundings of the Bad Batch, but doesn't need to use the characters as much. Like they're in obviously the other 2 episodes, but the first episode they kind of just pop by to exchange a few goods, and then kind of go away because then they're at their heart, they're still clones. I know they've got different personalities, but at their heart, they are still pretty uninteresting characters that really can't go very far in terms of changing who they are. Like, the reason these guys are interesting is they each have their own unique personality, but I don't think their personality will ever change. Like, Rex as a character is still the Rex from the first episode of Clone Wars. So it's kind of like, you know, let them fall into the background when you have a story like this to tell.
Especially when you have a 16-episode season and like you're now doing multiple of them. It's like at a certain point you can only tell like there's only a certain amount of stuff you can say about these characters.
Totally.
Like, yes, they're different clones. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
We'll give them a bit of development. Now we've got it. Okay, cool.
Well, the reason that the Clone Wars worked is it was never, like, Anakin and Obi-Wan and Ahsoka were kind of the protagonists, but you had episodes that were with, like, Mace Windu on another planet with just some generic clones, which, it's like, imagine if the Clone Wars was just clones, and that's what the show could be. Thankfully, that's not that. But I hope they see how good these functioned without them and do a little bit more. Because, really cool political intrigue, really cool action sequences. And just, I love getting into politics in Star Wars. Isn't it crazy? Like, however many years on from the prequels, we actually want politics.
Yeah, I know. I mean, like, I maintain that, again, the politics of the initial, like, the prequel stuff was all, like, super interesting at a core lore level. It was just so terribly done. And so, like, when they go into in Clone Wars, it's some of my favorite stuff, so I'm so glad we continue to get that. Here. I mean, lightsaber battles are fun, but they can only keep me entertained for so long. And I will say, you forgot the most important part of this 3-parter, which is
I didn't forget. I dodged the
blurgs make a return.
The bloody blurgs.
They're just so wonderful. They are clearly, again, Filoni needs to insert it into everything he can, and I appreciate that on this occasion, because eventually I'm going to make Will buy a blurg.
It'll happen. Watch it. Give me a year. We'll see what happens. I'll buy the full set. That's how deep I'll go. But no, it is good. It's just that connective tissue. Filoni just and Favreau in Mando, but they just nail how to make the universe feel connected, which is super cool. Next episode was Cornered, and it's almost on the same vein as Space Dragon. Someone had taken over Sid's place, and they just had to get him out.
This is the Pikes one. Interesting how it's
wow. There you go. Oh, God. Yeah. Well, if you remember at least that, do you remember anything else? Because I remember they went through a floor, and that's all.
So Sid's place gets taken over by a drug runner who's working for the Pikes, and then they steal the spice or something. This fucking spice, I'm sick of it. Get rid of it. Again, this is all the Pikes do, is get spice. And then basically, because they like lose, they try and steal the spice to stop them taking it or something, and they take it down into this hole, and this hole has weird insecty things. And then they drop the spice in there, and then they realize, oh no, we've lost the spice and we need to get the spice back so we can pay the Pikes. So then they go back into the hole, and then they like rappel down it, get the spice, insects come out again, go back out with the spice, and then that's it. Again, lots of spice, lots of Pikes, and really not.
You've said spice enough for them to not use spice in Star Wars for at least a couple of years.
No, totally. And it's like, that was the whole arc of the Martez stuff as well. That, like, I get that they're linked to, like, Darth Maul and all that crime syndicate and stuff, but anytime they show up, this is all they care about, is like getting their fucking spice. And I just don't, I just really need them to stop. Like, there's also like 3-4 other crime syndicates that Darth Maul operates with. Can we not use one of them? Can we not maybe get Paul Bettany?
Totally.
For a cameo? I'm sure he'd do it. He's in the Disney family.
That's true.
So like, I don't know. It's
so
every time I think about this episode, I'm like, like, even more so than that other filler episode. I mean, I don't even remember it clearly because I can't remember the Space Dragons. But I think the problem is that I remember this one and I remember how bad it was compared to the rest of the season, which was so much better than I was expecting. And then I just watched this and I'm like, oh my God, like, why? It's also, I'm not going to harp on this episode for too long, but clearly I am, because it's also just that they like take the spice out, drop the spice in this hole, then go back out, then realize that, oh no, we shouldn't have done that, and then decide to go back in there, and we have literally like the same scene happens, I believe. It's like it feels like they're not distinguished in my brain. It's I don't know what it was, because just the rest of the season was so good. Anyway, I'm going to shut up about the spice.
No, it's
okay.
Makes me angry. It's also funny because it marks seemingly the end of them needing to chill with Sid and all the rest of that.
Yeah.
As the show seems to be moving in a new direction for season 1. So it's like, it's not the greatest finale for what was so integral to the show for half the run.
Yeah, totally.
Like,
totally.
Terrible, weird episode, but at the same time, still looked good. The music was still good. Like, there's never a 100% bad episode amongst
the tension with the insects was good, whatever the hell they were in the end. The sexual tension,
sexual tension with the insects.
No. Just no more pikes.
No more pikes. You hear that? Unless you need them for, like, the Solo sequel, I'll let you use them in that. Like, Solo's all about spice.
Even then, again, you have four other crime syndicates. There's that scene in season 7 where he's talking to all these other groups.
Dudes, yeah.
Like, surely, why do we never see them? Why is it always the Pikes? I'm sick of them.
They probably just love saying it. Now they've got the 3D model as well. They'll probably be like, well, we've got them, we can use them. I'm sorry, Ben. It's okay. Because the next episode, War Mantle, was really good. This was the episode they head to a planet. It's one we've not really seen before, but it's a little Imperial barracks, and there we get both proto troopers, which are basically almost stormtroopers, and kind of they looked like the old concept art, which I always love. Like, all of Rebels is built to be that, but I liked the use of those kind of designs. And also we get Gregor, so we're inching closer to the Rebels clone crew as well, which is cool.
Yeah. Again, one of those weird little cameos that wouldn't have seen coming, but when you think about it, makes so much sense.
Makes total sense. And I love that they're like, that he is working for the Empire. Like, he's just a trainee. Totally. Like, it's a really cool bit of lore that, again, you wouldn't really consider, but any clone that was good, it's like, of course you'd get them to train, similar to what Crosshair is doing, I guess. Yeah. But really cool, and really, really cool that he's not crazy yet. Because I didn't quite like Gregor in Rebels, where he's just kind of a bit loony. And you can see the threads happening though. And like, I like, again, shout out to D. Bradley Baker, because like somehow still manages to give all these clones different, unique voices and personalities. I don't know how he remembers them.
Literally, like, one of the things I will say is the amount of times I listen to the Bad Batch and I'm like, how is Wrecker the same person as Tech? Like, or they're just so different. I'm so impressed at how he continues. How is he not won an award or something?
Totally. Yeah, he's definitely one of those voice actors that will just go unnoticed for his life. And
totally.
But really, really cool episode. This also had a sneaky cameo of Commander Scorch from the Commandos.
Which that game you loved.
I loved it. It didn't break. It all functioned perfectly.
This is a place where I'm not very familiar. I don't know these older Star Wars games myself. I do like that they're like picking and choosing. There's this, and then in Mandalorian we've got the, what are they called? Death Troopers. And you get the prototype Death Troopers as well. Yeah. I think in like episode 1, maybe even. Of this. Anyway, so they're picking and choosing little bits of that old Legends lore, which I'm fine with, because, controversial opinion, a lot of that old Legends lore was a bit dumb.
Not great.
And I find that they just like got rid of a bunch of it, but they're picking some of the good stuff out, which I appreciate. Especially, like, I don't know anything about Commando Scorch, but I'm sure plenty of people do and love him. So I'm glad that they brought him back.
There's also, like, sound effects that are used from those games, which are really cool. Like, when Hunter gets killed, quote unquote, when his visor turns on, and the whole animation of that is apparently ripped straight from that Republic Commando game. So there's cool little elements like that, which I'm always interested in, because as much as Filoni's a fanboy, I'm sure the team making the show are.
Oh, totally.
So there's probably elements that we're like, oh my god, isn't it cool that they wrote that in? When really it was like a VFX guy was like, oh man, imagine if we just do this. And that's
every time we talk about Filoni, we're shouting out to everyone that makes the show, because I'm sure they all have various bits they're pulling in. Yeah.
Because the other thing is, this show, it's definitely him, but I think a different team was kind of mainlining it as well. Like, it was obviously Filoni's.
He's working on like 3 other stories and shows and stuff as well. So
he's becoming he's just like the head ops guy now. He's the Feige.
He's the Feige.
And then like at the end of this episode, because we're almost at the finale, so things can't go perfectly. They escape with Gregor, but Hunter gets like. That's right. They're on the cliff face and stuff, and they're trying to get away and all the rest of that. And Hunter gets captured by old mate Crosshair and his group. And again, like the shot when he's on the ground getting up, it's like close to his face, and they've just racked all the focus on him, and there's beautiful depth of field. And I think that's one of the elements that really just makes the show stunning. Is I think they've gone again the route of Toy Story 4, where they've got an anamorphic bokeh where it's not circular, it actually looks like it's shot on film as well.
Yeah, totally.
And stunning.
Very, very beautiful.
I'm keen to rewatch this. And the annoying thing, Rebels and Clone Wars are great because you kind of, and maybe there's one or two, but you can not watch half of those shows because there's so much filler. This show is all story. I don't think I can miss much.
As we've established, there's 2 episodes that we can not watch in this season, and the rest is all pretty relevant to the rest of the season. But even that first filler episode, you mentioned Crosshair gets a Death Trooper squad.
So really, it's just the Pikes.
Yeah, totally. And I think heading into those last couple episodes, just touching on what you mentioned a minute ago about it all being beautiful, we head to Kamino. And Kamino, across this whole show, but especially in these last couple episodes, is like so stunning.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things where I feel like it's almost, I will say, the prequels did Kamino very well, like in terms of the way, probably it being so dark and wet probably helped in terms of their CGI, because they could keep things a bit in shadow. Yep. But I thought that was one of the harder parts of making Kamino look good, feel as like creepy, I guess, as the original trilogy and stuff. Prequel trilogy, not the original trilogy. Oh man, just the Kamino, the music. I remember I'm messaging Will after I watched, because I watched these final 2 together, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a second. And I remember messaging Will afterwards being like, oh man, this just made me cry. Just these like the music cues that you remember from my childhood, but then that became significant through Clone Wars and stuff as well. Yeah. So good.
Yeah, incredible. Stunning episode. You get a lot of time underwater as well, which I feel like, in animation you tend to avoid because that's a very difficult thing to do, but they nailed it here. But yeah, like you said, you watched it in a double whammy. I watched it over the 2 weeks. I think the first part of this, the Return to Kamino episode, functions really well as a finale.
Yeah.
But the back half of Kamino Lost is still good. Like, there's nothing wrong with either half. But Kamino Lost feels like a opening to season 2. Like, it's that you leave a cliffhanger and you continue it into the next season. But if they'd been together, I think, as a cinematic experience similar to the first episode, I think it would have all felt really good and felt like a really emotional payoff for a finale.
It was wonderful. I love this. Because I watched it as an hour-long episode. And that's where a lot of these like final arcs, I think, stand out of all the Filoni shows. It's the same with like the final 3 or 4 episodes of Clone Wars season 7. Yeah. And then even like the
Rebels stuff as well.
Rebels, when Ahsoka and Vader face off and that kind of stuff. They, in my opinion, I realized it as I was about to watch episode 15. I was like, no, you know what? Knowing what I know about these shows, I'm just going to wait. I don't need to watch this week. No one's spoiling this show because no one's watching it. Yeah, no. So I can afford to like wait a week, and I'm glad I did because from what I've heard, you're not the only person I've talked to about these last 2 episodes. That last one is quite rough, but as a follow-on, like a direct, if you got the continuity, it worked a lot better. just the claustrophobia of when all Camino is Topoka City is just being like decimated, and they're all like stumbling around.
Yeah,
just debris and everything.
Yep.
We get the return of AZ as well.
Yeah, that's right.
We saw a bit earlier on in the show, but he comes back, and it's again one of those little characters that was there at another point. They're at a very integral part of Clone Wars with Fives. Yeah, it's Fives, right? Yeah. But anyway, so like bring AZ back and then having like a really emotional moment with that weird little robot, which is executed very well, I think is kind of cool. But again, maybe wouldn't have had the impact if I'd watched it a week later.
Yeah, because it's the first half is really cool. It's a real slow build that crescendos in that amazing destruction of the city, and you get Tarkin saying "fire when ready," because of course you do. There's no way you can't blow anything up without him.
Yeah, of course.
Which was really cool. But and then there's the second one is kind of reacting to everything and taking a moment to analyze where everyone is and their headspaces, which just being the final thing didn't feel right. But as a single arc, that's just
it's
works.
a necessary evil to end a season. But I think definitely just bringing the two together, you can do it. You did it for the first episode. I think is fine. But it's not the end of the world, because now when you watch it, you can just watch the two together.
Yeah, I may actually watch that. As a single thing. That might be good.
It's mainly just like the execution of when they came out. I think that is the problem with it, rather than the actual episodes themselves.
Totally.
So
because obviously Crosshair gets to see the group and everyone. It's really interesting how Crosshair and Hunter seem to be the only ones that have a direct connection. It's a strange choice to make, as they're a full batch, but it's like anytime there's an engagement, it's not real. It really feels directed between the two of them. Obviously they spend prisoner time in this episode, but when it's the group facing off him, it's a weird thing that they never really feel. It never feels like he's accusing the whole group. It's always just like, screw you, Hunter. And it's like, well, they could have helped as well.
Totally.
But still really cool that we got to a resolution. Do you think that he has that chip? Like I know they were pretty direct with that, but it feels like it's still a vague thing of he probably, because he says he doesn't have one. He says that he's doing it on his own merit. Do you think there still is one in there? Because there was no scarring.
I think he has a chip, but I think they kind of establish it in the arc of... Which one is it? The Ryloth arc. They kind of established that even though they have the chip, that chip is for like specifically Order 66 and that moment, but that doesn't necessarily mean that afterwards, like that affects them permanently. So there's that particular clone that I can't remember the name of in the Ryloth arc that kind of starts defecting a little bit. Yeah. And I think they're kind of like establishing that, well, yes, initially the turn was caused by the chip, but now that we're far enough away from that, these characters still have their own agency. And like he's just like, no, this is just what I think is right. So I like that. I think that kind of makes sense. I do think they did it in a way that's smart enough where it doesn't invalidate them needing to get rid of the chips in the earlier episode, where it still feels necessary because they can malfunction, and if you're kind of rebelling against stuff, it doesn't make sense to keep it because you could just get flicked back at any moment. Something could trigger, but at the same time they kind of lay the seeds that, well, it's not like the be all and end all. It's not like now all clones are like this.
Bad.
They have their own characters afterwards, for sure. Like, does Gregor still have his chip?
I don't know. I think he does, and I think when Rex...
Yeah, they get rid of it at another point.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it really... that I hadn't really considered it in that way. So yeah, it really is all down on Crosshair being a little bit of a shit, which is... I felt like the end of all of this ends abruptly, I feel like. There's like that moment of like, do you want to come? And he's like, no. And it's like, you sure? No. And then they just fly away. And it doesn't really have much of a moment, but...
Yeah. It was the kind of thing where I was like, I feel like at this moment you could bring him back in. I don't know if you need his another conflict arc. Specifically. Yeah. Like, I don't know if that's as integral to the show as you think it is. Like, I feel like maybe he could come back into the group, and then there is a different antagonist that can fill out the show.
It felt already, despite there not being that much, but it also felt like he never really distanced that much from where he was as well. But yeah, there's just him spending time with the group, and I guess not killing them kind of fits the audience, just to be like, bring him back through. It didn't feel like, it felt like he understood what Hunter was going through and vice versa. I
feel like what they'll do with him is he'll go on another arc and he'll kind of have a think about it, and eventually he'll come over to their side.
It'll be really good.
Yeah. But I do feel like maybe was unnecessary, because this felt like a good point to be like, okay, we're back together.
The batch is back.
We're all happy. Not really, but we're happier.
Yeah. Our home's gone, but at least we've got Crosshair. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how long they string that out.
I think just you quickly mentioned that their home is gone, and I forget, but that's genuinely part of the reason like this last couple episodes made me so sad, is because they do such a good job across Clone Wars, but even just in these 2 episodes of establishing that this was their home.
Yeah.
And it's like, it doesn't look like a particularly nice home. It's all like medical facilities and stuff. But even then, like, they go into their little bunk room, and then while they're in the bunk room, everything starts falling apart. And I'm like, no, it's just so like, you're losing your home. Omega keeps looking back at like the only place she's known. There's the whole thing where earlier in the season, Hunter's like, you'll never have to go back there. And then she does have to go.
Straight away.
I just love that they managed to make Camino that cool and interesting.
Yeah,
because it has no right to be. It has no right to be based on what episode 2 did with it. And I do have one final point, which I was going to bring up earlier that I have remembered, which is, it's just a question: why are they always stunning people in this show? Why is the choice to constantly stun people? Because I'm like, okay, I understand you don't want to kill people. That's fine. I get it. Like, the logic behind it, not necessarily the issue. The issue is that previously in Star Wars, we've established that that's just not that big of an issue. We're just shooting people. It's fine. They'll get hit. They might not die sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's a very specific choice that the Bad Batch is always stunning people. It's probably because all the clones are our friends.
Yeah.
So like, all the clones are us. We know they're not doing it. It'd be interesting to see,
because they're mostly shooting at clones. It'd be interesting to see who, I guess when they're when they're at the refinery place with the Martez sisters, they're all or droids, so they shoot them. So I wonder once we start getting people, once they know, because they kind of do now, once they know. But
when they go to that, when they go and save Gregor, they're still stunning and everything. I don't know. It was just very weird to me. It's just one of those things I wanted to bring up.
Circles. It's like
seeing the blue circles. Also, like, just. It doesn't. It's. I don't know. I might have missed something in this show, but I don't feel like they ever mentioned that this was a thing they were going to do or why it happened. It just happened.
It happens.
And I was like, oh, this is just how it is now. Okay,
it makes
cool.
In the world of Star Wars, it almost feels like they're fighting with Nerf blasters now.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
Like, we're not going to hurt anyone. It's like, why? Yeah, no, that's fair. It'll be when someone gets like a Gatling gun or something and they start just stunning people with that. That's when it's like, you should start shooting people.
Totally.
I definitely felt that too. It was the one element that felt like Rebels in the sense of being a little bit skewed towards children to not show death. But it's also one of those things where, unless you've seen Star Wars before, they still look like they're shooting people. It's only us that look at it and go, why are they doing that? Anyone else would be like, oh, it's this weird little shooting.
They still look like they're shooting people. And it's just like, we've already established in Star Wars that shooting someone and them getting hit, like, even in this show, we've established that doesn't necessarily kill someone.
It can knock them out.
I don't know. It's just very weird. I ultimately, I don't care, and it's such a minor thing. But I just wanted to bring it up because, as you said, seeing those little bubbles is very weird.
It's a weird disconnect. But on a whole, apart from that and the Pikes, great show. Great first season of a show.
Totally.
And like I said at the start, where would you rank this in terms of openings to I guess they're all Filoni shows? Where does this sit for you?
Season 1 of Clone Wars is bad.
Yeah, it is.
Very bad. Season 1 of Mando, look, it's season 1 of Mando's pretty good, but I had my issues with it. Season 1 of Rebels, I think, is the strongest in my opinion out of those 3, but I do think this is better, even with those 2 episodes that I can one of them I can very clearly remember and hate, and the other one that I can barely remember. I think as a whole, somehow I would not have expected this before this show came out, but somehow this is definitely at the top of the list for me.
Yeah, I would say so too. I think the benefit of hindsight for the other shows, knowing that they get better, I guess, help. But comparing just a single season on its own merits, I think this does just feel the most solid and the most balanced in what it wants to do. Like the episodes that aren't directly on the plot still are engaging and still have elements of it, whereas the Clone Wars, there's no real arc, so less so on that. But Rebels and Mando just get lost occasionally in their episodes, whereas this always just kind of sticks on the same train of thought, even if it doesn't directly tie to the arcs.
I think it bodes well for the future, because I think it's a sign that they're kind of... the problem with the other 3 shows is they were all trying to find their feet and find their audience, and Mandalorian finally kind of hit that mainstream audience where they were like, okay, well, we've got something now. We can start making all these other shows without having to worry about what's next, what will succeed next. We've got Mandalorian, it's fine. We don't need to be trying to appeal to
we can just make Star Wars
different audiences. Totally. And I think that definitely shows in this show, where, as we mentioned, no one's really watched it, but I don't think they're going to see that as a problem. Yeah. Also, we don't have stats for that. Plenty of people watch
it just feels like... Well, the only reason I know no one's watched it is every Friday when I opened it up, I couldn't find it because it was never on the home screen. You had to go to Star Wars to Bad Batch and then find the new episode. Come on. I mean, they don't even do it for What If. What If is hard to find sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's true. Oh, there's an episode of What If that we need to go watch very soon.
I'm going to find out how long it is, because that's exciting.
Yes, that's very good. But yeah, no, and I think that's exciting for me, that they're we can make this show for you and me, that's fine.
They know that we're going to enjoy if you go deep in things, but at the same time with Mando and stuff, they've found that balance of anyone can watch this at the same time.
And season 2 was the strength of that, where they were like, okay, we have bits that are catering to everyone here, that's fine, but we've hit a good sweet spot of it. But I just like that this show is what it is, where it's unapologetically this is for the you and me, the people who watched all these shows, who know these characters, know these weird deep cuts. They did the pun again.
Hey.
But I just really respect that. I really respect that they're letting that kind of stuff get made for Star Wars now, because my biggest issue with it over the past 10-15 years has been that they're just so focused on the Skywalkers and all that around it, and they've always got to tie it to that somehow. This, I guess it vaguely is tied to it, but it feels like the least of everything. It feels like the least tied to it of everything, other than Captain Rex, maybe. Yeah. But even he's just from Clone Wars. He's not a tie from anything else. So
totally, yeah. It's cool. I'm glad that we're getting distance from them. Mando season 2 maybe took a little step back in that direction, but
only for one scene, really. That's okay
for sure. Full agreement. I'm glad that there's no Disney pressure. Similar to Marvel, I think they've finally let the minds do what they need to do with these shows, and keen to see where it goes. I didn't grab many viewer comments. The Discord was active throughout the show. There's just one bit, I just want this on file, because either because it will happen or because it's insane. Dolphin Pants in the Discord, I think after episode 3 or something, said, hear me out. They're going to make Omega into Rey's mum in an attempt to both make Rey more than just the daughter of a Palpatine clone. She is the daughter of a Palpatine clone, and a clone literally genetically manipulated to be super force sensitive, which may be able to retcon to why Rey is so force powerful. Look, I know it sounds crazy, but it is, because it is. But in saying that, can you imagine if they pull it off? They won't, But
I
also,
hope they don't.
yeah, it's also, I guess I could see is also where he comes from, because like Omega is kind of similar to Ray, good at everything. So I could see that, but I also think
if anyone's gonna do it, it's gonna be the Filoni crew. Everyone working on that side of things will make it make sense somehow. I do think it's definitely the wrong. I think we just need to distance ourselves from that movie as much as possible. Yeah, even the Lego specials, which we love so much, have distanced themselves from what that final episode is.
Yep. It's fine. But if you are right, Lucas, it's on file.
Yeah, we've got it here. So.
Yeah, people know that you were right. Cool. Well, that's, I think, all we have to talk about on The Bad Batch until it heads on back to us sometime in the new year. In a week's time, when this is up, you got Star Wars Visions. So do not miss that. Give that all the attention you can, because it's a big experiment that I'm so excited that Disney are keen to do. Like, it feels like one of those things that Disney would be terrified to get a bunch of anime studios to make Star Wars.
I love What If, but I'm excited that this is like so different to that, and they're like, we're gonna like properly experiment, see if this works. I feel like it's almost a test for both Star Wars and Marvel, because Marvel have said they want to step up their animation game. I feel like this is them testing the waters out there and seeing like, okay, how weird can we go?
Yeah, how far can we push the bubble? I'm excited. And they also know that people are going to, some people will at least watch it twice as well, because the English cast is insane, but then obviously you're going to watch it as it was made.
Yeah, no, I watched, because when the trailer for that came out, I watched the Japanese one initially, and I was like, oh, this is so cool, I can't wait to watch it, and like I'll watch it with subs and stuff, and then I started seeing who was in that English cast, and I was like okay, well, this is going to require at least 2.
Oh, so excited. We get to, I mean, depending on when that episode comes out, but we might see similar in Star Wars before we see him in Marvel.
That's true.
Technically.
Us specifically.
Yeah, us specifically. Super keen for that, and I'm sure we'll do a wrap-up podcast on that as well. But if you want more podcasts, well, you're probably already listening to it, but if you're seeing our faces right now, you can go to the link down below to the Buzzsprout page, and then that's got a bunch of links to Spotify's, to Google Casts, wherever you're listening to it. If you're on Spotify right now, or wherever you listen to podcasts, you can go to youtube.com/each to their own. We've got videos there. We also stream on twitch.tv/etonline. If you can't find that, I'm sorry. Go through one of the links. You'll find it eventually. Where are you, Ben?
Where am I? I'm at Ben Argle on Twitter. I do a bunch of Twitters there. I also do at least try to stream on my own Twitch channel once a week. Twitch.tv/ArgonTV. Streamed last night, Lake, which Will actually recommended to me. It's a lovely little game. And I can't. You just deliver post.
I can't deliver. I can't finish the game.
But it's wonderful. And then I try and jump on these guys' content whenever I can, because it's a lot of fun. And then also I do the social medias and that kind of stuff for Back Pocket, which Will is also involved in. That's what gets us paid. That's what lets us do this stuff in our free time, which is a lot of fun. Please support this, but also support them over there at Back Pocket Vids on all the social medias, twitch.tv/back_pocket and youtube.com/ there's a Back Pocket channel. I feel like that's probably right.
Maybe that. And you can give them money at patreon.com/backpocket.
I think so. You'll work it out. Backpocket.gg has all the links.
All the bits. And if you want to give us any money, I didn't mention before, but we've also got Patreon at patreon.com/each to their own. $3 will get you into our super secret Discord, where you can discuss probably Star Wars Visions. We'll have to change that channel. But
we'd love any support you give, because the more support we get, the more fun, cool stuff we can make. We have some fun ideas, and we want to make them. So
there's some cool stuff coming your way very soon. This is over because we've got to go watch What If.
We do.
It's very vital to us. As much as the money and the Back Pocket and all that is vital, What If is very vital to us. So we're going to go watch that. Until the next time, though, I've been Will.
And I've been Ben.
He's been Ben. Good night, everybody. I don't want to say good night. Like, they could be watching at any point, and I always say good night.
It's because it's nighttime for us.
It's always night.
As you can see, my screen has progressively gotten darker over the course of the episode, so I hope you've all enjoyed that.